Hi, welcome to today's Slow Flow to Go. Thanks for joining me. So one or two cushions today and a couple of blocks. So I say one or two because we're going to start sitting on a cushion. So if you know that one is enough, then grab one. And if you know you like to have an extra one, then grab an extra one. So sitting down on your cushion, and then it's your choice if you want to come into cross legs or whether you feel comfortable to have sort of one heel in front of the other so that the knees open up a little bit more. And this is where you can have a play around seeing how many cushions you might like. My hips are relatively open, so my knees do get fairly close to the floor. Don't worry if yours don't. If they're a little higher, that's fine. If you notice that they're really high, you might find that having that cross leg and supporting yourself with cushions is better. So finding yourself into a position where you think, yeah, I can be comfortable here for a few minutes. And then allowing the hands to come down onto thighs, onto knees, just kind of falling down wherever feels natural. And eyes come to close. So noticing how it feels to be in this position. Maybe there's a little bit more length through the spine by sitting down on a cushion instead of straight on the floor. And starting today by bringing into your mind something that brings joy or contentment into your life. It can be something really simple. In fact, in some ways, maybe the simpler the better. Allowing that thought to come into your mind, come into your body. And as you allow that thought to come in, how does it feel to experience that thought in your body? Noticing the subtle changes in your body as you think about that feeling of joy or contentment, that thing that brings that feeling to you. And perhaps noticing that even if that thing that brings joy, the person, the place, whatever it might be, maybe isn't here right now, noticing how the memory is still able to create feelings in the body, recreate part of that experience. Taking a few moments with that feeling. And this is something that you can always do at the beginning or the end of a class. You can do it in your own time in meditation, or even if you're just having a day that's feeling really difficult. No matter what else is going on in the day, the memories that you have, the experiences that you have, they're yours and yours alone. And you can call on these experiences, these feelings, whenever you need them. Allowing yourself to sit in this feeling of joy or contentment, inhaling it into your body. Allowing it to fill every space in your body. maybe there's a sense of lightness that gets created that allows your inhales to come a little bit deeper for a little bit longer. Stay in with that for a couple more breaths. And then on your next inhale, keeping your eyes closed, allowing the arms to float upwards, maybe to the sides, maybe out in front. And then reaching up when you get there, fingertips reaching to the sky. Maybe you want to interlace the fingers, and you can kind of either turn the palms up to reach the ceiling, or you can keep the hands as they are, fingers reaching up towards the ceiling. And then having a little explore here, maybe taking the arms to the side. Maybe kind of bringing them forwards and back, so a kind of feeling of rounding and arching the spine. So having a little play into what your body feels like it would like today. On your next inhale, reaching up tall, releasing the fingers, and exhaling, arms back down, opening the eyes. We'll come back through a few stretches. So inhale, arms rise up. And then you can take a little interlace of the fingers again if you'd like. Keeping the palms kind of in and the heels down this time. And then we'll come through some gentle circles. So taking a little bend over to the right hand side, bending through that right elbow this time. So that you get a little bit of an opening that's maybe a bit stronger through the left side body. And then rolling forwards, folding forwards. Coming over to the other side. So this time bend in the left elbow and stretching over towards the left side, opening up through the right side body. And then exhaling forwards. Inhaling back to the other side. So we'll come through this just one more time. Getting a real sense of opening up the body. Nice, really mellow flow for you today. Exhaling forward. And then inhaling, other side. And then gently drawing yourself up to center. Inhale, reaching tall. As you exhale, option if you want to bring the arms down in front of the body onto the ground. And maybe you kind of lean into the arms and this feels like enough here. Seeing if you can keep the hips grounded down. Maybe there's space to begin to fold down a little further. So again, seeing what feels right for your body. Maybe you come down to forearms. Folding forward as far as feels good. Inhaling. If you came forward, walking the hands back in. Bringing the hands behind the body, just changing the cross of the legs. So if you've got one foot in front, changing that over, or if you're on cross legs, changing that over. And then inhale, reaching tall. And exhale, folding forwards again. So as I said before, don't worry if you just fold forward a tiny bit. You can stay really quite upright if you want, or you can begin to travel down onto elbows. Inhaling, walking hands back in. And then bringing hands behind the body, feet to the floor, and rolling over onto one side. We're going to come into all fours, so removing any cushions out of the way, and then finding a way to all fours. So hands underneath your shoulders, knees under hips, and starting by taking circles, exploring through the hips, through the shoulders. And back to center. Bringing the big toes together, keeping the knees apart, rocking back into child's pose. Again, you can use any cushions here, supporting in between calves and thighs or underneath the forehead. Inhaling, pressing through the hands and rounding through the spine as you come up. Coming forward so the shoulders are over the wrists, and then arching the back, looking forward and rolling back down to the heels. So coming through that a couple of times, tucking the chin, rounding the spine, pressing through the hands, coming up. And then arching the spine as you move back. Couple more times. Tucking the chin, rounding the spine, moving forwards. And then rocking back, opening up through the chest. One last time. Tucking, rounding, moving forwards really slowly. And then arching as you come back. Lowering the forehead back down into child's pose. Coming into a little side stretch. So ever so slightly lifting the forehead, walking the hands over to the right. And then lowering down, maybe the chest lowers down over the right thigh. Coming in to open up the left side body really gently. You can come over as far as you want. And then pressing into hands, lifting the chest, walking back towards center. Exhaling, keep the hands walking over to the left and lower down on the left side. Inhaling, lifting chest, coming back to center. One more breath in center. And then pressing through hands, back up onto all fours. Separating the feet so they're hips width apart, knees are hips width apart, tucking the toes under, pressing through hands and feet to downward facing dog. So if it's your first downward facing dog of the day, nice big bend through the knees, really just getting grounded, maybe a little nod of the head, checking that Mr. Neck's not doing all the work in this pose. You can pedal the feet here if that's something that feels good for you. Or you can just kind of stay with the knees bent. You can begin to straighten the legs out. So really starting to get a feel now as you get a little bit further into your yoga practice, a few more weeks in, of being able to kind of explore and see what your body needs as you start off class each day. Option to stay in your downward dog, feeling out. If you'd like to, then you can lift the right leg up. It doesn't have to be very far. Opening up the hip by bending the knee. Maybe you gaze under the right arm if you're feeling steady. Grounding down through both hands if you can. And then bringing the leg back to center, up onto the left toes, and wherever you are, stepping forward in between the hands with your right foot, lowering down the back knee. You can keep the toes tucked under if you want, or you can let the foot come flat. Inhale, rising up into your low lunge. You can keep the hands on the ground if you prefer, or lift them up high. And as you exhale, bringing that left hand down underneath the left shoulder, and then opening up with the right hand to the sky in a twist. So really broadening through the chest here, waking up the body, the spine, waking up the hips and the legs. Exhaling, hand back down by the foot, and you can either step back into all fours here or straight into downward facing dog. So if you're going straight into downward dog, toes tuck under, lifting the knee, and then right leg scoots back to downward dog. So again, feel free to have an explore in downward facing dog. If you'd like to, on your next inhale, you can lift that left leg back and up. Open up the hip by bending the knee, looking under the left arm. And then inhale to center, coming up onto the right toes, and wherever you are, stepping forward with the left foot in between the hands, lowering down that back knee, toes untucked or tucked, whatever feels best. And then option is you inhale if you'd like to lift the arms up, or you can keep them on the floor. Exhaling, right hand comes down, and then left hand opening up to help open up the chest, coming into your little twist on the side. Exhaling, hand back down by the foot, and then coming up onto the back toe, lifting the knee, and stepping back, downward facing dog. Taking 2 more breaths here in your downward facing dog, really letting the head be heavy. On your next inhale, rising up onto your toes, and then stepping to meet the hands at the top of the mat. We'll come straight this time into forward fold. So maybe you want to take a hand inside each elbow, into a kind of ragdoll position. Little sway side to side. And then releasing the hands, a little tiny bend through the legs, rolling up really slowly to stand. Once you get there, option 2, try a little balance today. If at any point you want to bring a foot down, then by all means do so. And you can also do these if you're not super confident with your balancing, with a wall beside you. So feel free, if you've got a wall or a chair, to have a hold on to that. Don't worry about needing to do it without support if that doesn't feel comfortable. So starting by seeing if you can bring the weight into your right foot, and thinking about those 3 points of support that we often talk about. So the base of the big toe, the base of the little toe, and the heel. Having a little kind of feel around, where are those 3 points? And then seeing about bringing your weight into that foot, finding something to focus on that's not too far away, something that's definitely still and not moving. And then seeing about bringing the hands up to prayer, and maybe as you inhale, pressing down through that foot, you can lift up the left foot. So coming into half mountain. From here we're going to see about tipping back into warrior 3. So in warrior 3, we begin to bring the foot back and the body begins to tip forward. You're pushing away with the heel of the foot here, and you don't have to lift it very far. So you can lift it just off the ground, or you can come a little bit further. And then if you can, holding that for just a second, taking one breath here, And then if that feels good, you can take a step back into your high lunge. So if you had to put the foot down at any point during that, then don't worry, you can absolutely pop the foot down in between any of those sections. So you can pop the foot down between high lunge and warrior three and warrior three, half mountain and warrior three and high lunge. Inhaling, reaching up with the hands in your high lunge. And then exhaling, left hand comes to the ground, keeping the knee lifted this time underneath the shoulder and opening up in your twist. As you exhale, bringing the right hand down and lowering the back knee. You might want to scoot it back a little bit. Taking hold of your blocks, untucking the back toes, and then rolling and rocking back with the hips, lifting up the front toes. So we begin to open up the back of your right leg. So the blocks are there just to kind of help keep the spine long. If you're feeling very open and you don't want to have the blocks, you want to bring the hands to the ground, of course you can do that. And you can begin to fold over that front leg if you'd like, or staying nice and tall here if that feels like a good opening in the back of the leg already. Taking a couple of breaths here. And then inhale, walking forward with the blocks, coming back into a kind of low lunge position, bending the knee, bringing the foot down. And then moving blocks off to the side, hands down by the foot. Lifting up, tucking the back toes, lifting up the back knee, and coming into downward facing dog. From here, lowering the knees down to the ground. And we'll take a little bit of a break doing some work on the ground here instead. So keeping the toes tucked under, walking hands back, and then hands come behind the body. So if the fingertips don't quite reach the ground here, then you can either untuck the toes, if that's a bit better, or you can use your blocks to give you a little bit of extra height. So it's entirely up to you. And we're just going to do a little bit of lifting and lowering with the hips. So for me, this one feels nicer with the toes untucked, but see how you go. It's not comfortable for everyone to have the toes untucked here. So hands come behind the body, pressing into hands and feet. You can come up onto fists if you want. And then lifting the hips, it can just be slightly, or it can be a bit further. And the gaze can come up, it can stay forward, or the head can come back. And then tucking the chin, lowering back down. Coming through one more time. So pressing through hands, lifting hips. And exhale, lowering back down. Walking the hands in front of the knees and pressing through the hands to lift the hips, tucking the toes underneath. And then bringing the heels to sit back on the toes. Now this can be quite intense and you might want to keep the hands forward. This is going to open up the backs of the feet and they tend to get really, really tight, sometimes without us even knowing. So if you're suddenly thinking, my goodness, this feels like an enormous stretch in the back of the feet, it's probably because your feet are quite tight. If it does feel okay, you can walk hands up onto thighs or you can bring hands to prayer. And seeing if you can stay here for a couple more breaths. So if at any point this gets too intense, hands can come forward and you can of course always untuck the toes if you want. So maybe you bring the eyes to close, sort of bringing the concentration inward a little bit, seeing if you can send your breath to those feet if they're feeling really, really tight. Couple more breaths here. So there are long lines of connective tissue of fascia that run from the bottom of the feet all the way up. So often if the feet are tight, it can affect the hips, the legs, the lower back, even the neck and shoulders. So really good to open up the feet in this way. One more breath here if you can. And then bringing hands down to the ground, untucking the toes for just a second. We're going to do a little bit more work in a moment, but let's take a child's pose just to relieve the feet for the moment. So knees apart and big toes together, lowering down, allowing those feet a little bit of rest time. And then inhale, pressing through the hands, walking the hands back in. And then this time, leaning forward on the hands, lifting the hips, tucking the toes under. It won't be as intense this time, I promise. And then bringing the hands back, lifting the knees. So coming into a little squat. So you'll have heels together and knees apart in this squat. So it's not as bad as last time. The pressure's kind of off the feet. And then if you want to, you can either stay here in your squat, opening up the knees, opening up the hips, or you can begin to take a little bit of a fold forward. So again, this might be a little fold, or it might be that there's space to kind of really fold forward here. And no right or wrong. So, if you want to stay quite upright, then feel free to. You've also got cushions and blocks. So if you want to come down part way, then do use those to support you. So not forcing anything here, just having a little feel into what your body needs. And then on your next inhale, coming back up, walking back up with the hands. And then we're going to bring the knees back together, lowering them down into all fours. So walking the hands back out, untucking the toes. And maybe you take a little kind of side to side with the hips here, or a couple of little circles. Release everything. And when you're ready, tucking toes under, pressing through hands and feet up into downward facing dog. So really checking that your head's nice and heavy in downward facing dog, getting a feeling of the spine being as long as it possibly can be. Almost like the chest is sinking down towards the ground, pressing down through the heels of the hands, and particularly the thumb and the index finger. As you inhale, rising up onto the toes, and then walking or stepping, coming to meet at the top of the mat into halfway lift this time. So bringing hands to shins or thighs, seeing if you can draw the spine long and seeing if you can really open up through the chest, almost pulling the shoulder blades together a little bit. Exhaling, releasing forward fold. And inhale, rolling through the spine, coming up to stand. Maybe the arms come out to the side, reaching up overhead. And then palms together in front of the heart. So let's come through all of that on the other side. Might feel completely different on this side. If you wobbled last time, you might find you feel super steady. So see how you go. And like I said, if you want to be bringing the feet down in between, so if you want to kind of go and bring the foot down in between each one, then feel free to do so. Otherwise, see where you end up. So let's ground down through your left foot this time. So finding those 3 points on your left foot. Maybe lifting the toes, letting them lower back down again. And then thinking of the base of the big toe, the little toe and the heel, like that little kind of tripod of support. Pressing down through the foot, finding a place to focus on, hands come to prayer. And as you press down, maybe you find a bit of lightness, which allows your right leg to lift. Coming into your half mountain. And then if you want to, warrior 3, you're beginning to bring that foot backwards, pressing with the heel. Maybe the body tips forwards. You don't have to come very high with the leg, and you don't have to go very low with the chest. Seeing if you can do one more breath. Don't worry if you wobble, don't worry if you fall over. And then stepping back into your high lunge. Woo! And maybe you save a wobble like I did. So back into high lunge if you can. Inhale, reaching up tall. And then exhale, bringing the right hand down underneath the shoulder and opening up into your twist on this side. So keeping the knee lifted, left arm opens up to the sky, left fingertips reaching up. And exhale, left hand comes down, lowering down the back knee, untucking the toes, grabbing hold of your blocks. So walking hands back with the blocks and then lifting up the toes on the left foot so that you can really kind of stretch and open up the back of the left leg. So something that helps with opening up the leg here is to kind of almost feel like you're pressing the left hip towards the back of your mat. And you'll notice as you draw the left hip back further that the stretch increases. So as with before, you can stay up on your blocks if you want. That helps keep the spine long, and that'll mean you don't have to kind of round and maybe not be able to touch the ground comfortably. If the reach is there comfortably, you can bring the hands down if you prefer. That just makes it a little deeper. And of course, you're welcome to fold forward all the way if that feels comfortable. So this is about working with your body and what it needs, where it feels good. So one more breath wherever you are. And then bringing the left foot down to the ground, bending through the knee, walking the hands forward, taking a breath in, low lunge, using the blocks again, keeping the spine nice and long. And then moving blocks out to the side. Hands come down by the feet. Coming up onto the back toes, lifting the back knee, and stepping back, downward facing dog. Couple of breaths in downward facing dog before we bring the knees down. Seeing if you can really ground down through the hands, through the feet, getting a sense of the heels drawing down to the earth, the hips lifting high. And then gently lowering the knees down to the ground. We'll come back through our little kind of opening poses on the ground. So to either toes tucked or untucked, whatever felt good last time. Back onto the heels, hands behind the body, coming into saddle pose. So pressing through the hands. And as you inhale, lifting the hips from the heels as far as feels good. Maybe the gaze comes up to the sky, or maybe even the head comes back. And exhaling down. So this can be a really, really small movement. You can literally hover the hips from the heels just a couple of centimeters if that's what feels best. Inhale, lifting up. Exhaling down. Let's go one more time here. So pressing through hands, lifting up the hips. And exhaling down. And then walking the hands in front of the knees. Lifting hips from the heels. And tucking the toes under. So we'll come back into that stretch, opening up the back of the feet. So your choice this time whether you want to take this or not. If it feels like too much, then feel free to stay with your saddle for a little bit longer. Otherwise, you can keep hands in front this time. You can bring hands onto thighs, or you can bring hands to prayer. So we'll see about holding this for just a couple of breaths this time. Maybe there's a little bit more space in there now. Maybe it still feels just as intense as it did the first time. Perhaps you close the eyes. You're using your breath to help you work through any discomfort. And then hands come down in front of the knees, releasing those toes. Maybe you give them a little shake. Bringing the big toes together, opening the knees nice and wide, and taking a little rest in child's pose. As you inhale, pressing through the hands, rising back up, taking the hips away from the heels. And I'm going to tuck the toes underneath again, coming into that squat. So heels are together, knees apart, walking the hands backwards, lifting the knees from the ground. And then maybe you stay, keeping the elbows in between the knees, kind of opening up the hips, and staying here, just getting that sense of openness. If you want to, you can begin to take a bit of a forward fold. You can use your cushions as support, absolutely. So do feel free to bring them in front and come down onto cushions instead. Otherwise, you can walk the hands forward. Maybe it feels okay to come down to forearms. No worries if it doesn't, going with where feels good. So a couple of breaths here, wherever your body wants to be. Inhaling, hands walking back in if you decided to take that forward fold. And then finding your way into all fours. So it might be that you walk forward a little bit so that you have space to bring the knees down, untucking toes, and then that little rock side to side in your all fours. From here, coming to sit down, so bringing the feet up to the side and lowering down onto your back. So scooting about halfway up your mat and then lowering down nice and slowly onto your back when you get there. Keeping the hands down by the side for the moment. As you inhale, lifting both of the feet from the ground, tucking the knees in a little bit, and then seeing how it feels to push the heels up to the sky. So you can hold onto the back of the thighs here, keeping the head on the ground. And then exhaling, bending the knees. Inhaling, straightening up the legs, pressing through the heels. Exhale, bending the knees. So if you want to, you can stay holding on behind the thighs. If you'd like to make it feel a little more challenging, if that's feeling very comfortable, then you're welcome to bring the arms up and overhead and then pressing up through the heels with the arms overhead. So this will just engage through the legs a little bit more through the hip flexors. But do feel free to keep the hands there if it feels better, okay. And exhaling, bending the knees, coming through one more time. So inhaling, pressing up through the heels. And don't worry if the legs are not dead straight up, that's fine. And then bending the legs, bringing the feet back down to the floor. Opening the arms up into a kind of cactus shape. So bending the elbows and keeping the elbows at about shoulder height, opening up and broadening through the chest. And then as you inhale, broadening and opening through the chest, exhale, lowering the knees to the right. Inhaling back to center and exhaling, knees over to the left. Inhaling to center, knees over to the right, this time leaving them over on the right, and maybe you bring your gaze, turning your head to the left, so coming into a little spinal twist. As you inhale, bringing your head back to center and then knees to center. Exhaling, knees come to the left. An option to bring your gaze over to the right elbow as well. Maybe you allow the eyes to close. Inhaling, head draws to center and knees to center. Lifting the feet from the ground, both knees into the chest, hugging the knees. Maybe inhale, maybe you like to draw the forehead to the knees, curling up in a little ball, squeeze in, exhaling, opening the body and releasing, coming into Shavasana. So perhaps you'd like to keep the knees bent, feet wide, knees knocking together, arms opening up, palms to the sky. Or maybe it feels more comfortable to have the legs completely stretched out to the ground. So wherever feels good for you today, finding a place that really suits your body, where you feel that you can let go and open up for a few minutes. Maybe you check back into that something that brings you joy or contentment that you thought about at the beginning of class. How does that feel to have that in your body now? Allowing that feeling and that thought to fill your body completely. And as you take your next inhale, seeing if you can draw the breath into any little spaces you possibly can in your body. Exhaling through the mouth, deep sigh to release. Surrendering to your body, allowing it to let go and relax. And staying here for as long as you're able to today, at least another minute or two, if you can. Allowing your body to have a few moments of restoration. Really important part of yoga practice. Thank you for joining me today. I hope the rest of your day goes well moving forward. Namaste.